when this handsome guy happened to come to school to find his dog. All the girls immediately went crazy for his junk, which was huge. I mean, they couldn't help but admire his cuteness. The school's top beauty immediately stepped forward to ask for his Insta ID or phone number, anything he'd share. But he said no. Our guy completely has no idea what an Insta ID is. Can you eat it? He said he had nothing except his package. This was the first time she was rejected and she got mad thinking he was just playing hard to get. But our guy didn't care at all. He just picked up his dog and tried to leave. Just then, the school's top bully saw him surrounded by girls and got furious. Why was this nobody suddenly getting so much attention? So he grabbed a ball and kicked it with all his might. The ball flew straight at our guy's face. He took the hit without dodging, ignoring the blood from his nose. He was only angry about one thing. The thug almost hurt his dog and now he had to apologize. But the bully just laughed back. He invited our guy to go talk privately where the girls couldn't see. As soon as they turned the corner, the cowardly bully kicked him in the back, where a whole gang of thugs was waiting. They were ready to welcome him nicely with their fists. But first, the main bully warned him not to go near the school's beauty again. Our guy just turned his back and walked away, completely ignoring them. A few guys immediately blocked his path and made a fatal mistake by threatening his dog. One of them tried to grab the dog and received a single punch that knocked him out on the spot. The other thugs were shocked to see him take down that guy with one punch, so they did the stupidest thing possible. They attacked him together. What they didn't know is that our guy has an immortal heart and he's too strong and too fast compared to them. So it's no surprise that just a few moves were enough to blow them away. The lead bully almost pissed his pants and was cornered against the fence. Our guy unleashed a devastating finishing blow, but stopped at the last second, instead cracking the wall above his head. All the thugs were terrified and ran for their lives from a monster like him. So why is our guy so strong and why does he love dogs so much? Just like John Wick, it all started some time ago. A pair of street thugs cornered him, trying to bring him down, but he lunged toward a high-voltage electrical cabinet and ripped out a bunch of deeply plugged wires. A massive current flowed through those cables into his body, electrocuting him along with the thugs who were holding him. The current incinerated all three of them, but only our guys survived to see the next day. Although their explosion stripped the flesh off his entire body, he still came back to life. The boy truly revived from the dead. Well, it's not for nothing that he's called the revival boy. You see, in this special world a small minority possess special hearts. It's a rare mutation that only blesses a few people. These mutant hearts allow their owners to use extraordinary abilities, completely defying common sense. Of course, those who possess these abilities are called heart mutants. For some, a mutant heart is something to be craved, a blessing from God granted only to a privileged few. But for our boy, that blessing fell like a curse when he was given the revival heart. Every time he dies, the heart brings him back from the dead and begins restoring his body. For a decade they imprisoned him in a laboratory, subjecting him to unimaginable torture. They forced him to drink deadly poisons and cut off his limbs systematically. But no matter how brutal the boy's unique heart forced his body to revive. On one fateful day, he finally escaped. However, a decade of non-stop pain had left its mark. Now he wanders the world looking like a living corpse. Because of his appearance, he retreated to a local junkyard and began searching for edible food to help replenish his body. He found a piece of rot bread that still looked edible, so he started devouring it. On their outside he might look scary, but inside he's incredibly kind. Seeing a hungry puppy begging for food, he decided to share his meal instead of keeping it all for himself. Thanks to this kindness, he soon had a whole crowd of four-legged fans around him. Suddenly he heard a noise. Peeking from a safe distance, he saw a few thugs harassing a high school girl. Those bastards clearly had bad intentions, trying their best to corner her. The poor girl tried to reason with them, pleading that she was just an underage student. But these degenerate disciples of EST didn't care. All they wanted was their next victim to mess with. You might wonder what a schoolgirl was doing in a deserted place like this. Well, it turns out she was carrying dog food. That clue was enough for our boy to realize she only came here to feed the stray dogs. Before things could get worse, our boy finally decided to intervene. Hiding his hideous face under a handkerchief, he warned the thugs to leave the girl alone. However, it was clear that these thugs wouldn't be afraid of a wanderer living like a sewer rat. They even put their arms around our boy, mocking and getting intimate with him. But that was a big mistake. They were about to witness something they could never have expected in their wildest fantasies. A literal bald zombie with almost no flesh left was looking straight into their souls. One of them even screamed like a terrified bitch. His face was drenched in sweat. Our boy went into a fighting stance, swinging his bony arms and threatening the bastards to get out. Shaking like leaves, the thugs tripped while running for their lives, leaving the beauty in distress behind. However, looking at the man with no flesh left, she felt even more miserable. Her fear increased as this terrifying skeleton rushed toward her, only to slide right past her. In fact, the boy was just chasing the bag of dog food she dropped on the ground. He began devouring it as if his life depended on it, and to be honest, it did. The guy didn't just eat the food, he was literally inhaling it. However, he didn't forget his manners. He apologized for startling the unsuspecting girl and politely asked if he could keep the dry food. Hearing this rattling skeleton actually speak, the girl shot off like a bullet, her mind on red alert before this Frankenstein-like thing. Well, our boy also expected as much, and honestly it was to his benefit. Now he didn't need anyone's permission to eat the rest of the food. Unexpectedly, the girl was braver than those bang gunner guys. She was still there, peeking from a safe distance and watching him eat. Analyzing the situation, she realized that a human still breathing with a body devastated to this extent was scientifically impossible. Therefore, it was hard to deduce that he was a heart mutant. She was used to heart mutants possessing all sorts of quirky abilities. Realizing that he had just saved her, she felt indebted and walked back to him as a gesture of goodwill. She cautiously handed him a Subway sandwich, assuming he was hungry. Naturally, the boy had no idea. This development was completely unexpected. When he reached out to take it, she apologized for running away after being scared of his appearance. But you couldn't blame her. That is a very natural reaction for any human. Staring at the gifted meal, the boy realized this was the first time he had received food from another person. He was overjoyed and immediately started eating. He had never eaten Subway before. He was only familiar with the wrappers he found in the trash can. The first bite really made him feel like he was in heaven. He couldn't believe that such a heavenly food existed in the world. It had been so long since he had eaten anything with fresh ingredients like this. She not only looked beautiful, but her inner self was just as lovely. Her nerves finally calmed down, giving her the courage to ask his name. The boy introduced himself as Gio. She greeted him warmly and also shared her name Songhai. To continue the conversation, she asked him why he lived such a hard life outdoors like that. Gio revealed that he was being hunted by people who wanted to experiment on him. It turns out there's a dark laboratory, whose sole purpose is to capture heart mutants and perform sick experiments on them. That's exactly why he'd rather live in a junk than be a lab rat. He was clearly stressed after absorbing the harsh truth about his situation. She had only heard rumors about this on the news and didn't realize it was actually true. Geo emphasized, swearing that every word he said was the truth. He had been stuck in that lab for a whole decade enduring torture and all sorts of sick experiments. They actually forced him to drink poison or injected it straight into his veins. Just thinking about this poor boy having to endure 10 years of torture made Jai feel nauseous. Because Geo possesses the revival heart, no matter how much suffering they caused, his body always regenerated, not letting him die. However, those constant experiments made him permanently look like a living corpse. Feeling deep sympathy for his situation, the girl decided to take him along. She grabbed his hand and started pulling him, but his arm completely detached from his body. Seeing the severed limb in her hand, Jai was horrified, thinking she had just ripped his arm off. The boy calmly took back the hand and snapped it into the joint like a Lego piece, reassuring her that it was her fault. It's quite common for his limbs to fall off sometimes. A while later, Geo was seen wearing a baggy hoodie on his skinny frame. He had brought him some new clothes because his old ragged outfit definitely made him look like a homeless person. She reassured him that the clothes were nothing special, just a few cheap items. However, for someone who knew nothing else but torture and pain, the soft fabric touching his corpse-like skin felt absolutely amazing, almost blissful. After sorting out the clothes, she took out a makeup kit and started putting makeup on that bony head. Looking at his newly refurbished face, to be honest, he didn't look too bad. Nevertheless, Jai still apologized if she messed up, admitting she had absolutely no experience doing makeup on bare bones. However, our guy was completely satisfied. In fact, he was extremely grateful for everything she was doing for him. Suddenly, the alarm on her phone went off, making her realize she was late for classes at the academy. In a hurry, she said goodbye to him and rushed off in the opposite direction. Before leaving, she asked him to take care of the dogs for her. Well, it seems like Geo is about to fall in love. And since she entrusted the dogs to him, he is earnestly hoping she will visit again tomorrow. You know, our guys has never had the privilege of experiencing love before. Experience the compassion you deserve to receive. Back then, those soulless scientists saw you as nothing more than an experiment. Even after escaping from the lab, anyone you met was only afraid and ran in the opposite direction. But Hiji was different. Instead of running away or looking at you with contempt, she was the only one who treated you with sincere kindness. You were also grateful to the puppy that kept you there long enough to meet her, so you decided to officially consider the puppy your companion and started thinking of a suitable name. Finally, you decided to call the dog Potato. Once the decision was made, you were once again immersed in sweet thoughts about Hiji. The delicious taste of the Subway sandwich still lingered in your mouth, and the comfort of the new clothes constantly pulled your mind back to her. To you, she was no different from an angel descending into your life. You were so excited that waiting for tomorrow felt like pure agony. However, your sweet train of thought was immediately derailed as soon as reality hit. Looking at your own reflection in a puddle, you realized you were asking for too much right now. You did not deserve any of this. And worse, you didn't want to drag her into danger. With heavy thoughts weighing on your mind, you proceeded to leave the junkyard, deciding to find a place where a monster like you truly belonged. You wandered all night until dawn broke on the horizon. Finding you unconscious somewhere Under a bridge, a rat trying to gnaw on a bone woke you up. Looking around, you realized you had collapsed the night before. You started rummaging through your pockets and pulled out a handful of dog food you had hidden yesterday. You might not have yesterday's Subway sandwich, but that didn't stop you from imagining it vividly while chewing on the old dry kibble. As you forced yourself to believe you were eating a premium sandwich, the dog food actually started to taste a bit like it. Suddenly, Potato burst onto the scene and snatched the dog food right out of your hand, leaving you sulking in despair. Then, another realization flashed in your head. You had left Potato and the other puppies behind. So what was the dog doing here? When you looked up, everything became clear. Not just Potato, but the whole pack of puppies along with your benevolent goddess Hiji had come there to find you. A moment later, all the dogs received the well-deserved treats while Hiji was busy expressing her frustration. She had spent all day running around looking for you. The boy reminded her of the dangerous consequences of hanging out with him. Well, Hiji didn't even care. She was just glad she finally found him, and Potato was equally happy to be reunited with his friend. She had brought a ton of different snacks for him to try and urged him to eat. Thinking yesterday's Subway wasn't enough, this time she prepared a whole buffet. She started by introducing him to cookies and milk. After dipping a cookie into the milk, she gave him the box. As expected, this was the first time our boy had seen such a delicacy. One thing was for sure, it looked unbelievable. Without hesitation, he took the first bite. A massive surge of dopamine flooded his nervous system, and tears of pure happiness involuntarily rolled down his bony face. As if that sensory overload wasn't enough, Hiji decided to let him try a can of Pepsi. Suddenly, Doo's bones began to regenerate. Hiji was completely fascinated seeing some new bones grow. She was curious to know how many days it usually took for him to fully recover. Doo revealed that it actually took several years, making the girl extremely shocked. However, that was only the case if he relied only on regular food as his main source of nutrition. There was another way to regenerate much faster, but he didn't tell her because it was actually quite morbid. If he absorbed a massive amount of blood, he could accelerate his recovery exponentially. Instead of explaining that, he lied, claiming this alternative method only worked in a controlled laboratory environment, desperately wanting to change the subject. He insisted on returning to eating, but Hiji was curious and wanted to learn more about the labs. She asked if they really helped heal him there. Well, they had healed him, but only because they needed him to survive for their twisted experiments. Moreover, they were still actively hunting him, meaning he constantly had to be on the runs. The girl finally understood why he sneaked away without telling her. After all, he didn't want her to get involved with such dangerous people. A bit naively, she suggested reporting his situation to the police, truly thinking that it could save him. The boy quickly gave her a reality check. If he walked into a police station looking like a living corpse, they would immediately label him a monster and shoot him on the spot. However, Hiji replied optimistically, revealing that her sister was actually a police officer, and to make the situation even better, her sister was also a mutant hunter. This was a huge surprise to our boy, although he was still very hesitant to rely on outside help. The girl insisted that he trust her, assuring him that her sister was a very merciful person. Before heading home, both of them gave love to the puppies and temporarily waved goodbye to them. As they walked together, Doo reflected on his grim situation. He had been running for 3 years, and this was the first time someone reached out to help. It felt almost unreal, so much so that he seriously doubted if he would ever achieve a worry-free life, a normal life where he didn't have to constantly run and hide. His darkest doubts immediately turned into reality when a speeding truck intentionally crashed into him, knocking him away violently. A bold bastard stepped out of the car and aggressively seized the girl while his henchmen quickly rushed in to catch our boy. When they had pinned due against the wall, the lead boss finally stepped out. The boss felt extremely smug for finally catching his escaped lab rat. For all the trouble the boy had caused, the boss swore to make him pay dearly. As their trucks sped down the road, they tied poor dude to the rear bumper with a rope and dragged him at high speed on the harsh asphalt. Although being literally peeled alive like a potato, the boy was more worried about the girl. It was entirely his fault that she was dragged into this mess. So he had to do something to save her. But then again, he was completely helpless against these powerful opponents with his seemingly trash abilities. Losing all hope, he silently pleaded with someone, truly anyone. Please intervene. His prayers were soon answered by his furry friends. The whole pack of stray puppies was frantically chasing the trucks. Potato and the others started gnawing the rope dragging our boy. They finally managed to cut the stubborn rope. The truck screeched to a halt and all the thugs poured out to control the situation. Seeing the small dogs surrounding them, the thugs didn't feel threatened at all. Swinging their weapons, they began to crush the poor puppies ruthlessly, leaving a horrifying bloody mess. Witnessing his little friends fight and die for him ignited into a burning desperation to help them. But with his body completely shattered and exhausted, he couldn't even crawl. Meanwhile, Potato lunged at one of the thugs, biting so viciously that the guy started bleeding. Seeing the crimson liquid fall onto the pavement, Du realized he could use it. If he could absorb the amount of blood that the thug just spilled, at least he could regenerate his body. Unfortunately, it seemed he was running out of time. Potato was horrifyingly struck down, completely motionless. Seeing the soulless body of his best friend lying on the ground along with the 7 others, something began to change inside Du. He remembered the 10 years of hardship spent in that lab, being tortured in every way imaginable. And it was just a single event. It was his daily routine. Even when he finally escaped that living hell, he found no solace in the outside world. He was treated like a monster, a walking plague that everyone shunned. Everyone shunned him, except for the little furry friends and Hiji. For the loyal friends he finally had and for the chance to live a normal life, his primal survival instinct became intense. The spilled blood began to react to his sheer will, drawing toward his broken body like a magnet. With a whirlwind of blood swirling around him, the boy who was once a pathetic pile of bones fully regenerated into his true human form. Finally, he looked like a normal human again, just like when he was a child. His body had regenerated back to its previous peak state. But at what cost? The devastating loss of his little friends. Don't forget the animal-abusing thugs who were currently standing there in total awe after witnessing this bloody miracle. One of them snapped out of the shock and swung a wild punch at our boy. But the absolute cool newly reborn guy didn't even flinch. He actually punched that bastard away without even looking at him. Not only did he throw a punch, but the absolute power behind it was so terrifying that the thug was sent flying, crashing into the side of the truck. Du took a moment to mourn his deceased friend. He held Potato in his arms silently, vowing to avenge their deaths. Besides, he truly had direct experience with the most painful torture techniques known to man. The scene cuts to an abandoned warehouse where the previous vehicles had parked with their latest hostage. They pulled the bag off her head and she demanded an explanation. But before she could process anything, she looked in horror at dozens of cages. Suddenly fear set in and she started wondering where she was. The warehouse was filled with discarded human corpses, being slaughtered and experimented on. One of The men grabbed her hair and insulted her as a noisy brat. He wondered if she was a big mouth because she had many lives to lose. But the good thing was he only cared about the skeleton guy. That guy blamed Hiji for helping one of their escaped test subjects. That's why he warned her not to anger them, or she would be 6 feet under. After all, in this warehouse, the dead meant nothing, so her life wouldn't matter either. Suddenly the boss received a call from one of his men and he demanded to know the situation of their test subject. He was told the whole story about how the dogs had sacrificed their lives just to save the half-dead skeleton and how that very skeleton had regenerated into a complete body. The boss didn't know what these guys were talking about and tried to ask for info about the dog. Meanwhile, Hiji was trying to decipher the meaning behind his answers. Everything became clear when the boss was informed of the skeleton's escape. He began to roar at his simple-minded subordinates for screwing up the only job they had. He smashed the phone in a fit of rage, threatening to blow their brains out if they didn't return with their precious test subject fully intact. Venting his anger on the girl, he demands Hai to answer, forcing her to say that his rage could rival Gordon Ramsay's when he sees something undercooked. While he was rambling, Hai had no idea what this guy was talking about. The boss thought she was playing dumb on purpose and decided to pull out a knife, threatening to stab her if she didn't talk. The schoolgirl trembled in fear as she realized she had made a huge mistake that put her life at risk. She cried, thinking this was the end of her life. Just as the thug was about to kill her, one of his henchmen was thrown into the warehouse, grabbing everyone's attention. All focus turned to an unarmed man with only his bare hands. The boss didn't understand who this kid was. While our gloomy protagonist was striking a cliché pose, perhaps unable to see anything through that hair. One of the thugs tried to confront him, calling him a beggar, but he couldn't stand that disrespect toward his style, and grabbed the idiot's throat. With just his bare hands he could crush the other guy's throat. Currently, he is in a bloodlust coldly, reminding them that it's because of these bastards that Portado and the other dogs died. The other idiots decided to gang up on our boy in Jujutsu Kaisen style. The first guy even managed to land a punch on him, but it didn't cause any damage at all. Du retaliated with a powerful counter, destroying the guy's face with a single blow. Another guy attacked from behind, grabbing his collar, allowing his friend to start elbowing Du in the face. Surely these hits are brutal, but the ice-cold gaze of this man is all you need to know about who is in control of the situation. The mutant flipped the guy over, showing monstrous strength while the others looked on in shock. Du called them insects, knowing they were all hired by that He research facility. This name stunned HRY and made her immediately realize that this kid was actually that clumsy skeleton. The dog-faced boss decided to grab her hair again, shaken by his own realization. They hadn't been able to track him down all this time because of the difference in his regeneration abilities. But now that they knew his identity, Du was actually shot. The guy pulled out his American-style Glock to kill the immortal child. The boss signaled all his men to unleash their American spirit. And with that spirit, those watching should also hit that like butts. Gunshots were fired from every direction, ravaging Du's body like hell. Their goal was to shoot him so much that his regeneration couldn't keep up and he would be neutralized. The heavy rain of bullets didn't stop. Actually, Du had to endure ultimate punishment from every penetrating wound. He could feel his flesh being torn apart, his bones snapping and crumbling, his lungs punctured, making basic breathing difficult. Seeing him being tortured and tormented like that made Hai Jai burst into tears as she begged these cruel people to stop. Our boy finally collapsed on the ground completely, defeated by the previous shots, with blood flowing from every direction. Many parts of his body had disappeared, completely from being shot so many times. But, even with so much blood loss Du decided to use one of his abilities to control the blood of the corpses and suck it in. His mutant hearts began to activate, and the boss's henchmen also noticed this. Du's blood manipulation ability gives him a reversed curse technique to heal his body. Those who get it, get it. This guy has infinite recovery, so the boss ordered his idiots to start shooting again before he becomes too strong. Du endured fatal shot after fatal shot to the head's feeling the exact same pain as always. Every time he was torn apart, his body would recover over and over again, a painful loop. But even he was surprised that the pain lessened each time. This was nothing compared to the 10 years of destruction and torture he faced at the hands of the lab. He was even burned alive, crushed by a hydraulic press. Du had endured every type of painful experiment possible. Those experiments hurt infinitely more, so he responded with a right hook that broke bones and blew off the first guy's face with his punch. Bullets no longer had much effect on him because he was used to them. Before the other idiots could react, Du was already in their faces. He beat them to a pulp just like Maki did when she destroyed the Zenin clan. After knocking one guy into some crates, he took down another, and then 3 more rushed at him at full speed. Every time he remembered Portado's little innocent face, he became John Wick and slaughtered everyone in his path. Those dogs were like children to him, and they died to protect him. The boss was now terrified for his life. He threatened to shoot the girl if Du came any closer. But our boy lunged with terrifying speed and landed a devastating punch to his mouth. The punch was lethal and sent the leader flying into a container, knocking him out. The boss was still alive, but not for long, as he began to beg for mercy. On the brink of deaths, the game was over, because Du would not forgive how these bastards took his dog away. He smashed the guy's face into the ground, crushing it with punch after punch. It became a literal bloodbath, as our boy unleashed dozens of punches until the guy turned into a mangled mess of bones. When his rage subsided, Du stopped his fists, dripping with blood as every member in the warehouse had been taken down. The battle was over. He walked to Hai-Jai, who was trembling for fear that he would also hurt her. Truly an angel. She asked him if he was okay after being so badly injured, but all he did was melt into her arms, sobbing with relief that she was alive. The poor boy had been through so much and felt immense guilt because the dogs had thrown their lives away for him. Because of him, he was terrified that she might meet the same fate, and seeing her alive meant everything to him. It was a heartwarming sight as Hai comforted him with a hug, saying she was the one who should thank him for saving her life. A while after the whole mess, police officers arrived to arrest the perpetrators responsible and investigate the corpses in the warehouse. Their conclusion was that there had been some kind of internal conflict. While they were talking, Du and his girl were outside scouting the situation. Hai-Jai's older sister didn't think their involvement was a good idea, especially with a mutant, and she might even handle the situation herself. For now, our couple just needed to focus on leaving. The girl began to break down, but Du was by her side. They had brought all the dogs' bodies. Rest in peace, departed friends. Badak Sairo Tadangu Choko Bayon and Maru. The student blamed herself, believing that because of her involvement they were hurt. She couldn't help them or care for them. All she did was feed them. Her small contribution must have meant everything to these dogs, and they sacrificed their whole lives to save them. But Du came and bit his finger, not letting Hai-Jai take the blame, saying it was the blood he sucked from them that caused their deaths. She turned to him, confused about what he was doing. Do explained that his trick was to heal by absorbing blood. So if his blood was that special, then he wanted to try sharing it with the dogs too. Bring them back. The cut on his finger began to heal, so all his blood was absorbed back, not giving our boy a chance to help the dogs. He tried to bite his finger again, this time gnawing so hard that it sprayed more blood. Hai couldn't watch him torture himself and begged the idiot to stop because the dogs would only feel worse. Unfortunately, the poor boy was at his wit's end. He was just breaking down from the fact that the dogs would resent him. In fact, Hai Jai emphasized the opposite. They actually loved him very much. Those dogs didn't trust normal humans, but they had an affectionate bond for the monstrous test subject. Of course, our boy didn't know that. Hai Jai explained that each of these dogs had been abused before, thus destroying their trust in humans. That was just one more thing to make us feel sad. Why is someone cutting onions? Do had no idea they were abused and treated them as if they were always gentle. But Hai Jai taught him that hurting himself would only make those little souls sadder. She was even proud that they trusted him so much, proving that they felt familiar with his condition. A sad Do finally accepted his fate when suddenly a cute little puppy found its way to the two of them. It was actually Potato's child. And oh my god, it was the world's cutest fluffball. The tiny creature found itself drawn to Do before, staring at him curiously and wagging its tail. Instead of hating him as Do had predicted, the puppy actually showed affection and love by licking his hand. This cute little guy finally fell asleep right next to Do comfortably, confirming that all the puppies liked him. Once the little creature was fast asleep, Hai Jai wondered what they should do now. There was no way they could leave a newborn puppy alone. She thought about bringing it home, but Do's case was still a problem since he had been abused by an organization actively hunting him. Hai Jai ran to call her sister immediately, and then she explained everything they had done. Our boy had no idea what was going on. But in the next scene we arrive at the next destination. Our boy had never seen such a luxurious and spacious room like this before. In fact, he still felt like he was walking on eggshells and formally asked if he should go inside. Hai Jai reminded him that he was the idiot who protected her, so she was the one who owed him a debt. Then there was the fact that her sister wanted to meet the heart mutant. Actually, Hai's sister was investigating a case related to the Hemet facility. For the first time, our boy looked in the mirrors, and he actually screamed at his own reflection. The guy couldn't even believe that he had become more handsome and finally had a perfect body. All this time he thought he hadn't fully recovered. Since he was a little boy, his face had never fully regenerated, so he had no idea. Even at the labs, regeneration was slow, and every time he regenerated, he was taken out for experiments again. This was the first time he truly experienced his proper appearance. And the more she heard him, the more Hai Jai realized how tragic his story was. But more than that, there was something else that had been bothering her lately. She was curious about what to call him now that he had regenerated and no longer looked old. Guessing his age, Do forgot how long it had been. He entered the lab at age 7 and took the annual test 7 times. Then he failed 3 consecutive seasons, meaning he's currently about 17 years old. This made Hai spit her water out. She couldn't even believe this guy was her age. And all this time he hadn't said a word while she treated him like an old man. As an older person, the boys being lovable, blushed and said he just liked to be noticed and didn't care much. Seeing this side of him, she actually found him lovely and suggested they speak more intimately. It was time for dinner, so she told him to wash his hands. Right after, The puppy started eating. And our young man did as well. The meal was delicious, even though it was simple. Hai Jai even explained that she cooked very poorly, but she was happy that he liked everything she served. Du was overjoyed because he got to eat high-class food after years of slavery. While Hiai apologized on behalf of her sister, who couldn't seem to return home today because of work. Dinner ended with all the food cleared away. She told him to sleep on the sofa tonight. Du didn't even consider it an insult and preferred to sleep on the floor, but she urged him to use his legs and do whatever he wanted. Hiai went out, emphasizing that she had homework to do in her room, so he would have to sleep first. The lights were off, leaving the boy alone as he looked at his reflection on the modern television. He saw flowers everywhere in the house, not like the cold environment of the lab, and there was also the extremely soft sofa he sat on. The puppy devoured its meal before retching in alarm. Our boy ran to save it as it vomited. It let out a sound before continuing to eat, making our boy very confused. It was just a scare from this furball, who probably didn't even know of his existence. Gio was happy that nothing serious happened and finally fell asleep on the sofa, feeling extremely delighted with its softness. To make everything sweeter, the puppy was also sleeping with him. Now Gio wondered what name to give this baby, since this is Potato's child. He thought of some names like French Fry and decided to call it Fritter. He watched the baby fall into sleep, experiencing true happiness and joy. Today he had a good meal, a decent bath, and finally, a loving sleep. I don't know about you, but this thing reminds me of DJ. But despite all those things, Gio was aware of the harsh reality that everything given to him could be taken away. He recalled horrific memories in the lab, how the test subjects were all fleeing while the facility unit was mobilized to neutralize them. An explosion suddenly threw the subjects' debris, crushed most of them. This put them in a situation they couldn't escape. While the boss here pulled out a huge flamethrower and fired at them. To the unit's surprise, a girl manifested her ice power to protect everyone, urging Gio to regain consciousness. At that time, a child injected with Hasarama Senju cells activated wood style and freed our boy. The girl told Gio to take her hand and led him to the exit. He felt guided and finally escaped the dangerous lab. It all became meaningless when they were finally separated. And while he was enjoying comfort, his friends were in danger. This is why Gio doesn't want to repeat his past. He refused to let this peace be tormented or threatened. Anyone who stood in his way would face their death, regardless of who they were. The next day, we see our boy running for his life to save silly Fritter, who suddenly disappeared without knowing where to go. Gio had said cool words, but the moment his puppy disappeared, he turned into a crybaby. Let's go back a few moments earlier. Hiai went to school and wanted him in the house until her sister returned. She said goodbye to him while he wondered what school life would be like. Fritter was anxious and scratching the door for some reason. Both were confused whether it was in pain or just bored. It was at this moment our boy had the great idea to walk the dog. But Hai Jai thought it was quite risky for him. The guy was relaxing with a new face and had nothing to fear, while the girl felt his reasoning was fine. She urged him to get a leash if he was going to walk the dog, and even shared the house password for convenient access. A few moments later, the guy struggled miserably to tame the puppy with a leash. The naughty little French fry felt restricted and wanted to take it off. It was really angry, making Gio wonder if he had tied it too tight. The guy remembered the traumatic memory of being tied to an electric chair, shocked and burned non-stop. But this is the safest way to ensure that the small French fry didn't go around attacking other people's legs. While this guy was trying to accept his actions, he suddenly realized Fritter had disappeared. Reality shattered because the smart puppy had escaped on its own and fled. And that brings us to the present, where this guy is running for his life with tears falling. He dashed through the streets looking for answers in every trash can or even underground. Despite the search, Gio still couldn't find an answer, not knowing where to look. He was worried about the baby's condition and had bad thoughts that it might have an accident or a bad situation. The guy's reaction was very normal. Rio just promised to protect it and he already lost the puppy the very next day. At that moment he suddenly realized something. He found himself at school and right ahead was the silly puppy licking itself. Running over, Gio realized that the puppy must have used his scent to track her down. But while the two were having their own moment, the PE teacher noticed the kid running at incredible speed. Rio didn't even care and broke into the schoolyard, right where a soccer match was happening. He hid behind a tree, contemplating the interesting school life, even overhearing the conversation of a group of students talking about heart mutants. The news had reported that the facility was ready to pay 1 billion world KCH to recover a specific mutant. Seeing these people only cared about money and treated heart mutants as outsiders was enough for Gio to understand the normal person's point of view. He realized he was in danger near these people and went to find Fritter, locating it in the back. A few girls who wanted to be TikTokers were creating a trend and acting as if they were the coolest girls on the planet. Suddenly the real player, also known as the tiny French fry, joined the fun and caught their attention. They were adoring it and taking photos of the puppy when suddenly the boy's dark figure appeared in the frame, scaring them to death. The girls thought he was scary, calling him a pervert while Gio didn't know what to do. He apologized with a confused look, winning the girls' hearts. They thought he might be a first-year student because of his clothes, or even a transfer student, but he apologized for interrupting their filming. Funnily enough, the girls even invited him to join them, but he refused. The edgy girl in the group asked for his Instagram. This was the first time Mindong took the initiative with a guy, so this was shocking. This girl has 100 followers, so she is a real influencer. Mindong really wanted to use this guy as clickbait because he was cute and she thought she was so high value that no one would dare refuse. Except for Gio, who refused her, saying he had no interest, crushing the ego of the girl in seconds. He bowed and apologized while Mindong and her friends were processing the shock of being rejected. And I'm telling you, this girl is about to explode. The guy simply picked up his dog and ignored her babbling, only caring about Fritter's safety. At that moment, a red-haired thug came and asked where this new guy came from. Taegu was infatuated with Mindong and his friends all thought this shy kid was intentionally using his puppy to start a conversation with her. He was furious, unable to accept anyone targeting his prey, so Taegu grabbed the ball and decided to kick it with full force to teach him a lesson. The ball flew straight towards our boy. You didn't even know where it came from. Gio casually glanced at it without moving, so the ball hit his face with full force and bounced back. The girls looked over to check on him, realizing he was bleeding everywhere, appearing innocent and cute. Taegu pretended that it was just an accident, while Mindong scolded him for almost hitting them. What made our boy angry was not being hit in the face, but his puppy here almost getting hurt. That same puppy now looked as if it could swallow a leviathan. Taegu laughed, the big mouth trying to belittle our boy, but suddenly realized his crush was watching, so he handled the situation diplomatically, pretending to care about Gio's condition. Our boy simply warned this guy for threatening the safety of a pet, but since Taegu had apologized, He was fine with everything and left. Taegu might have let the situation pass after it was resolved, but this guy for some reason kept looking for trouble. Meanwhile, our boy was just happy that he hadn't lost his beloved puppy. And thanks to today's adventure, he even got to see what school looked like. His only impression of it was that the environment seemed fun and he wondered if he could enroll and make friends here. Then Taegu came to invade Gio's space and acted as if he came to apologize again. To compensate, the thug offered to buy our boy some bread. A strange offer to Gio, who was thinking of some other sweets. The guy was so naive and excited that he actually agreed to the offer. While Taegu even agreed to buy food for the puppy, but as soon as they turned a corner, this bastard tripped Gio in a mean way. Now, he had the kid where he wanted, with all his minions. To all mocked him for being too naive. There were a dozen kids here and their plan was to give the kid some real punches. Taegu laughed with his bully friends as they called Rio a weakling, mocking him for being too kind and stupid. After that, he turned to Gio and asked directly why he kept acting dazed and pretending not to know what was happening. Our hero was really confused and asked Taegu what he was talking about. He insisted he wasn't acting or pretending at all, because the boy really didn't know what he had done wrong. That was when Tai finally got straight to the point. He demanded to know why our hero was flirting with the person he liked. Mindong, his voice getting louder, and he stepped closer to threat him, saying he looked like the type who would cry and crawl away after just one slap. He sneered and asked where this sudden fake courage came from because now he had nothing to say. Then, the threats continued to pour out as Gio heard how Tai would handle him. He swore, but was the embodiment of a calm guy as he just stood still. Meanwhile, the rest of the thugs acted like amateur gangsters, surrounding the scene and laughing at the entire exchange. They told Taegu not to be too stressed with the new friend because he was so skinny that one strong kick could send him to the hospital. They even dragged our hero's dog into the mockery, joking that bringing a dog to school must be an outdated trick to impress girls, calling it weird and embarrassing as hell. However, nothing made Taegu calm down. If anything, it just made his anger explode. He continued to berate our hero, cornering him with all these accusations after accusations. Others, Gio slowly realized how foolish he had been, slapping his own forehead in disbelief. He had truly thought that Taegu called him out to hang out. In a brief and naive moment, he had believed the invitation was real. Instead, it was just a trap for a meaningless fight. However, our hero understood Taegu and his hot-headed bravery better. He refused to take the bait, trying to stay calm. He told Taegu that if his presence annoyed him that much, then he would leave. He wasn't ready for this kind of confrontation and refused to go along with whatever sick alpha male fight drama that Taegu was trying to stage. Just as Gio was about to leave, one of the thugs stepped in front and blocked his way, smirking that he actually had the nerve to walk away, as if nothing happened. However, this time Gio's voice was very determined. He told the boy to move because he was scaring his pet puppy Fritter. Even little Fritter looked angry. Annoyed, the thug raised his hand to slap our hero's face, calling Fritter a mutt, just like Gio, simply because the poor puppy dared to bark back at him. But before his hand could touch, our hero took action. In the very next second, his fist punched the thug straight in the face, sending him flying backward like a baseball hit out of the park. He fell hard to the ground, sprawling and dazed. For a moment, everyone just stood and watched, confused, almost offended by what they were seeing. Why was their so-called big guy lying on the floor groaning in pain? Then they all realized at once that this skinny kid had actually thrown a punch and dared to knock their friend away. Enraged, They lunged at Gio. But what they didn't understand was that Gio was bloodthirsty, but he would never stop defending himself. Something fierce flared up inside him, and within seconds, he moved at an incredible speed. He threw punch after punch, and men were literally falling like rain in the alley. And throughout the whole process, Fritter remained safe in the arms of our hero, protected and surprisingly calm. Finally, our hero stood in front of Taegu, just as he was about to punch him in the face. At the last second, he diverted the punch and struck the wall next to him instead. The impact made the wall crack apart. Our hero lowered his fist and humbly told Taegu that he had directly asked them to stop because they were scaring his little puppy. The sight of the cracked wall was more than enough. The remaining thugs turned pale and began to back away before turning and running. Even the almighty Taegu, who just minutes ago was throwing a temper tantrum, now stood silent and speechless. If a wall could crack like that, then if Gio's punch had landed on him, his head would have been crushed like a candy. He painfully realized that he had messed with the wrong person. Tears mixed with sniffling, as he suddenly bowed before our hero, desperately apologizing repeatedly. He pulled out his phone and showed Gio a picture of his own puppy. He insisted that he wouldn't hit the dog, that he was also a dog owner and would never hurt a precious little animal. He scrolled through the photos, trying to show how cute his puppy was, using it as a bargaining chip for forgiveness. Our hero, as naive as a 3-year-old child, looked at the photos and thought the dog was really adorable, since Taegu was also a dog owner. Maybe after all, he wasn't completely evil. Gio said nothing, but another realization flashed in him. He had used more strength than intended, and now he was suddenly very hungry. He hadn't eaten today, and that empty feeling began to affect him. Taegu couldn't understand this change, assuming Gio was pretending to forgive them just to get food out of the situation. Meanwhile, Hai-Jai sat in the classroom studying quietly, completely unaware that her new friend was out there causing a stir across the campus. For now, that was her concern. At the cafeterias, Taegu rushed to lead our hero inside and bought him a bunch of snacks. As soon as Gio saw the food, his mouth began to water, and even little Fritter was gleeful to see so much tasty food. Taegu watched our hero and Fritter devouring the snacks, thinking that our hero was crazy, insanely strong, but acting like a total loser. He muttered that no wonder he couldn't stand a guy like him. Just moments ago, with a single punch, Gio had actually sent a person flying. Taegu wondered if our hero was some kind of martial artist or athlete, but even so, cracking a wall like that was impossible. He had never seen anything like that in his life. Believing he needed backup, he picked up the phone and called his older brother Yang-chun, a 20-year gangster who was playing cards with friends. He asked for help, explaining that he was screwed because some random guy hit him. Yang-chun was happy about helping Taegu beat up a random guy, but Taegu argued that Gio was really strong and begged him to save his face just this once. Another gang member asked who he was talking about, and Yang-chun mocked Taegu, but since they were bored, they agreed to help. Yang-chun told him that he would stop by later and Taegu should bring our hero to them. Tai ended the call, grinning and smirking, thinking that Gio was as good as dead. But in the very next moment, our hero approached him and offered him some of his food, saying he felt lonely eating alone and wanted to share. Taegu refused, saying he had bought everything for Gio and even offered to buy more. Gio then shared it with Fritter, making Taegu think how this loser could be so strong. He noticed our hero's hand and realized that when he punched the wall, his wrist was injured, but now it was completely normal. He began to piece events together, recalling an online video about heart mutants of all shapes and sizes, making up less than 0.001% of the population but still extremely powerful in real life. Sneakily, Taegu asked Geo point-blank if he was a heart mutant. Our hero awkwardly tried to deny it, but he was a terrible liar. Plain as day. Taegu turned pale. He had never met a heart mutant before, and our hero seemed like such an ordinary person. Worried about how dangerous Geo could be, Taegu called Yang Chun again. When he reported that Geo was a heart mutant, he couldn't believe his luck. Everyone became alert. Taegu calmly whispered over the phone that this was very dangerous and they should cancel. But Chun refused, saying this was an even better opportunity and they would handle our hero properly. Taegu agreed, but our hero interrupted, saying he was finished and Tai should just go home. Taegu tried to argue that since there was still plenty of lunch break left, they should skip class and hang out. He took Geo to the arcade. Seeing the games and the shiny floors, Geo couldn't contain his excitement. Even Taegu was confused. This was Geo's first time at an arcade, and he shyly admitted he never knew places like this existed. Everything amazed him. Even a simple claw machine looked like the seventh wonder of the world. A Labubu was just like the one he saw on Hiji's bag earlier. Taegu was puzzled. If Geo didn't even know about Labubu, what had he done with his life? Taegu offered to put money in so our hero could try. But our hero was terrible at the claw game. So Taegu stepped up and caught a Labubu. Geo was ecstatic. Now he had a doll just like Hiji's. What he didn't realize was that Taegu was acting secretly behind his back, keeping him busy until the gangsters arrived. Taegu suggested they go to a karaoke room. He told our hero to pick a song and sing. Geo said he didn't know any songs, but Taegu insisted there must be some song he knew. Geo started singing, the only song he knew, a nursery rhyme, but with such passion that it was almost adorable. Taegu couldn't believe a grown man was singing a children's song, and wondered if our hero was acting. Geo explained that it really was the only song he knew, taught by his mother, before they were separated when he was 3. Since then, he hadn't lived a normal life and knew nothing about pop culture. Taegu felt sad hearing this. Realizing Geo couldn't live a normal life and suspecting something deeper was going on, he got emotional and gave him money, saying that since our hero couldn't live a normal life, he would teach him how to live like a teenager. They played all sorts of games, drums, arcade games, and dancing too. As expected, our hero was terrible at everything. After a while, they left the arcade. Taegu was panting because he had so much fun. He confessed that he had never been this happy in his life. He checked his phone and saw calls from his brother Yang Chun. Realizing time had passed and he had forgot his assignment, he looked at the photos taken in the booth photos, with Geo and Fritter thinking how stupid he was to take photos with the enemy, but Geo's innocence had changed something in his heart. He went to the alley alone, not bringing our hero along as promised. He apologized to Yang Chun, saying he was wrong and that our hero was actually a mutant. The thugs were annoyed, saying he had wasted their time, but Taegu persisted deep in his heart. He knew his actions weren't just for the dog but also for Geo and his character. He had asked Geo if the dog was his only family, and he realized that it was true. Taegu felt sorry but understood that his own dog was also his life, and he would do anything for it. He confessed that earlier when his friends tried to tease Fritter, he almost got angry too. It was just about the puppy, it was about our hero and his relationship with his dog. While Taegu was standing there, a fist flew toward his face, knocking him to the ground. Suddenly, Yang Chun grabbed his head, lifted him, and asked about the mutant's whereabouts. And this time, Yang Chun didn't look like Taegu's brother. Yang Chun asked Taegu if he thought he was joking. But all Taegu could think of was the precious memory he just had with Geo. Yongchun continued to scold him, saying everyone had gathered there to catch a mutant, and they wouldn't leave until they caught one. He told Taegu to start talking if he wanted to save face. Taegu persisted, insisting that it really was a misunderstanding. He explained that he had been with our hero all day, and if Geo were really a heart mutant, he would have felt something was wrong. But there was absolutely nothing. Our hero was just a loser. Even gaming at the arcades, he didn't get high scores, and at soccer, he was out of breath. Taegu tried to smile as a friendly gesture, admitting he had made a mistake wasting Yongchun's time, but Yongchun was satisfied. Yongchun then hugged Taegu, apologized, and asked if he was sad because he scolded and hit him. Before Tai could answer, Yongchun pointed out that his face gave, accused him of lying, and demanded to know why he changed the story. At the last minute, Yongchun continued, saying, mutants aren't what Taegu thinks. They don't look scary, but they aren't like humans. They are very dangerous with their ability to turn the world into a place full of risks. Taegu just needs to reveal the truth so they can all leave. Yongchun even argued that if Taegu was worried for them and they could lose to a mutant, then he shouldn't act recklessly. Taegu refused again like a stubborn bastard. Before he could say anything more, Yongchun said that $500 was the reward for handing over the mutant to the boss, which he considered quite generous. Yongchun explained that if Taegu handed over the mutant, he would also receive a reward. He revealed that he had arranged a broker who specializes in heart mutants, and this would be handled neatly. Taegu realized this was human trafficking. Recently, kidnappers have targeted heart mutants all over the country, and there are rumors that government research facilities buy them for money. He thought it was just a baseless rumor, but now he was witnessing it firsthand. He couldn't let that happen, so he apologized again, insisting that Geo was just a normal person. Before he could finish, Yongchun kicked him, sending him flying. The blow hurt his lungs, making it hard to breathe. Yongchun started beating him with his feet, stepping on his head over and over, crushing him, forcing him to speak. Taegu's legs stretched out and the pain sent him straight to a flashback. A while ago, Taegu was also beat by bullies like this until a loud voice shouted for them to stop. It was Yongchun along with his friends. Back then they weren't thugs yet, and they stopped Taegu from being beat to death. Taegu, a boy, happy to be saved but feeling humiliated. Yongchun comforted him, saying they trained at the same gym and he would protect Taegu from these beatings. Back then, Yongchun seemed loyal, quite cool, and not very good at fighting. So Taegu wanted to be just like him. But now his own teacher and friends were beating him repeatedly until he was bruised on the ground. Yongchun still insisted that Taegu was lying, right to their faces. He commented that Taegu had loyalty, which was pretty cool but misplaced. It should belong to him. He warned that if Taegu was thinking of selling the mutant to another broker, he could get at most 200 or 300, but he would be in direct danger. He signaled his thugs to bring a chain, wrapped it around his hand, and said he'd show how to live like a thug. This time, Taegu didn't hold back, saying they were not cool at all. Yongchun was almost breathless with shock. Even Taegu was confused as to why he provoked Yongchun. Yongchun got angry, preparing to strike while Taegu tried to apologize repeatedly, insisting he misspoke. But just as Yongchun was about to hit him, a strong hand stopped him. It was our hero. He said that if Yongchun hit someone with the chain wrapped around his hand, it would cause serious injury. Everyone was confused why this strange kid dared to stop their boss. Even Taegu was stunned, wondering how on earth our hero found out where they were. Gio squatted down and said, he came looking for Taegu because he never showed up. Taegu tried to warn him to run away and confessed that he was the one who called them to beat him even, telling them that our hero was a heart mutant. Gio was confused and asked why he did that. Taegu replied that he was just angry because Gio hit him, that he wanted revenge and he apologized. But our hero didn't care about that. Gio asked why he let them hit him with chains. Everyone was confused when someone swung a baseball bat at Gio, making him angry. The next second, all the thugs started hitting him with bats while Fritter barked, and Taegu tried to protect our hero. One of the guys squatted down and asked how he managed to interfere. But the next second Gio absorbed all the blood and punched the thug, sending him flying. Everyone watched Rio get up from the wreckage and Yang Chun ordered his gang members to attack. Our hero didn't flinch, attacking their faces, chests, legs and groins, even taking a few hits and punching back 10-0 times harder. Everyone was confused, wondering how he could be human with that fighting style. Yang Chun took matters into his own hands and rushed to stab him, mocking him for being stabbed in the heart. He whispered while stabbing repeatedly, hoping Gio would die. But Gio caught the dagger in his hand to stop him. Seeing our hero still standing firm, Yang Chun was a bit scared, thinking what kind of heart could be stabbed and still be unharmed. Our hero knew the answer but said he didn't need to reveal that secret. Then he stabbed Yang Chun's leg, causing intense pain. Meanwhile, the thugs ran away thinking they were no match for a mutant, but Gio wasn't ready to let it go. Now that they knew he was a mutant, none of them were allowed to escape. He beat them all to a pulp. When he was done, Taegu, also brutally beat, crawled toward him saying he would call an ambulance. Gio reassured him that he was fine. Taegu was confused, thinking about how our hero was stabbed and apologized once again. He raised his fist and punched himself repeatedly, cursing himself for his mistake, admitting he was ready to sell out his friend just to look cool. He confessed that he used to hang out with those guys all the time and back then everything seemed to be fine. He thought that looking cool was supposed to be like that. But now he realized all these people were dangerous, and he shouldn't have got involved with that bad crowd. Suddenly Gio gave Taegu a cloth to wipe his bloody nose. Actually, it was a puppy pee pad. But Taegu didn't mind and just used it. He mumbled that someone like him doesn't even deserve to be called a friend. Our hero just smiled, saying he was happy that Taegu considered him a friend and that was enough for him now. Hearing that, Gio once again touched Taegu's heart and Taegu immediately hugged him. He clearly understood that our hero was truly the coolest person in this story.